All right, I've been looking forward to this for a while. This is like chasing someone you want to date to get them to come out with you, and they finally, I got her on the podcast. Welcome, Wafa, to the Leaders Who Care series.
Oh my God, I'm so excited to be here, Mark. You're the best. It should be really fun.
Well, flattery will get you everywhere, so that was great. Um, always the best place to start is, and I have to do this even more with men. I say, if you can tell us a little bit about you. See, men usually go right to their title and their job, and that's not the question. Can you tell us a little bit about where you're from originally, where you are now, a little bit about your family, maybe something you've never told anybody and you want to reveal to the world now? That's always fun too. But just give us a sense of who Wafa is.
Yeah, sure. So basically, I grew up and I was born in Bahrain. Bahrain is a small island in between Dubai, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait. And I have always been a very curious child. I love to read. I love to write. I was just a natural creative. I did a lot of art. I was a natural problem solver, and I just loved entrepreneurship. I remember very cliche, like trying to sell lemonade from a lemonade stand, but in Bahrain weather, which is like 50-degree heat in the summer. But
How'd
I,
you
I
keep
just
how'd you keep the lemonade cold?
I didn't. And I think everybody who bought it probably just chucked it anyways. But they saw this girl trying to sell her heart out in the neighborhood. And I'm a bit of a black sheep in my family. Nobody is an entrepreneur. I don't know where I got the bug from. I've always been very hungry and my mother has been such a great mentor to me. So my parents are also from Bahrain, just extremely like hardworking parents, ethic. They just would be up at 6 a.m. and go to work and come back at 5 p.m. And having a two-income household was just a game changer. My dad would cover the fundamentals, my mom would cover like the trips, and when we had like crazy, wacky ideas, she'd want to get behind us. So it was such a
Very
very
cool.
privileged background. And I think a really fun fact is I've done Ironman, so I'm a very avid triathlete. I always loved sports. I loved football and I played that for as long as I could. And I'm a mother of two, and I have two companies today. I run a PR and communications firm, which my brother basically handles. It's more of a family business, and I run a technology.
Cool. Well, we don't have any more questions. That's cool. Now, thanks for coming.
Bye, Mark.
No, that's fantastic. Do you have siblings?
I do have siblings. I have two brothers. One is taller than me and younger, so he works with me on the agency. And then I have a younger brother who actually works with my husband. He's also an entrepreneur.
So how did you guys get along when you were younger?
My brother and I are very close in age. My mom had us quite close. And I think we were very competitive by nature, and I think we fought a lot. But strangely enough, now we get along really well, and he's just the kindest, sweetest. I mean, my heart goes out to him. He's just the bomb. Like, I just have a very cool brother, Mohammed. And then I have Abdullah, who's younger, who also, for a period in his career, about 5 years, worked with me in the agency. And he's, the younger child. He kind of does his own thing. And there's a 6 year gap between us. So, like, he never got he didn't get my parents. He got a complete set of different parents who were like, it's 10 p.m. Where's we don't know where Abdullah is. And it's like, are you kidding? Like, I would be home by 10. So he got a completely new set of parents. So I think he's very different just because he had parents, my parents really trusted him and gave him a lot of leeway and freedom just because he was the youngest. I think as the oldest, I always felt a sense of responsibility to be the best version of myself to take care of my family. You obviously get that as the oldest, just this sense that you can't let anybody down and you want to yeah, be a good ROI for your parents, right? Because they
I've
invest
never,
in you
I've
the
never,
most.
I don't think I've ever heard anybody say be a good ROI from my parents before.
Totally. I have to be a return of investment. Like, okay, we're gonna give this girl everything we have and we're gonna get behind her and support her and put her through the best education, but she better pay it forward in some way by taking care of the family or taking care of us or just being there for us.
It's interesting you say that because I had a conversation with a lady, Karndi. She's in Thailand and she had two brothers. And the natural tradition was the brothers get first choice of going to school and this and that, but the male thing. And she actually said she asked her parents, "Is that going to happen?" And they said no, they're committed to having her definitely go to school, even if one of them can't, type of deal,
Yeah.
because they wanted to give her the best chance possible, which was pretty opposite what tradition was, back then. So,
Yeah, Mark, and just adding to that, that's a really powerful point. I think something I take completely for granted, which you just kind of highlighted, is both my parents worked, and I think they were very much equal in my household. Like my mom earned her stripes as a contributor to the household, and I think we take for granted that that me and my brothers were, given the same opportunities, options, and treatment. I could play sports, I could wear shorts, we had the same curfew. He didn't have an advantage over me because he was a boy. And I think later on that gave me obviously a lot of confidence in business, and even speaking to very senior members of government or in the private sector, or when I'm able to pitch, I just never saw there was a difference between me and anybody else. So I think definitely that's a great gift, and that's a reason why I was raised in that way. And I think looking back now, there were so many girls that did not have that advantage. They very much were segregated, or the brother in the family would have an advantage in terms of like freedom and options and opportunity. So there was a stark difference. And then that's a lot more work for women in the future to really build up their confidence, and it changes your view of the world, I think. So yeah, definitely had an awesome advantage in that way, that my parents were like, everyone here is the exact same and equal.
yeah, and it's like when our parents asked, "Are you going to have any more kids?" And one would say, "Well, we can't split up the love with another kid," type of deal. And yet the actual answer is more love happens because you have more. It's kind of the same if you give everybody in the opportunity, or if the husband and wife are partners like your parents were, it becomes, much bigger, an opportunity, much bigger, a positive result than restricting it, or we only have so much to go around and stuff. So great attitude in partnership in marriage there, and creating good role models, for you. So when you talked about, we talked about school a little bit, your education choice was, correct me if I get this wrong, bachelor's in interior and spatial design and interior architecture, right? At the University of Arts in London, if I'm not mistaken. What were you envisioning when you went that route?
So my favorite classes in school were art and English. And in my culture, you can't really build a perhaps successful career as a business owner if you're study English. Like, so there is this kind of, I guess, downside. Like, what are you going to do? Become, and we're not going to send you to an expensive university abroad, and again put that investment up for you to want to be like a writer or a teacher. So that was off the table for me.
Hmm.
And I really loved art, and I was not a big fan of math or anything kind of technical or science. So my parents were very supportive, especially my mother. And I think they had a vision of me to become a successful designer. The only option, if I wish to have come back to this part of the world, is to go down the interior design path or interior architecture. We don't have a lot of successful stories around women in fashion and women in film and media. And I think these are very young ecosystems. So my parents had the foresight, like the only type of designer that is commanding bigger contracts are interior architects. So the decision was made for me before I even went there, that if I wanted to choose design and study in London and go to a great school, it had to be the subject. Now, my first year of uni is something called a foundation year, which is very different than the American system. So you kind of um, dabble into different sectors of design. So I did fine art, I did design, and I did media and film, and I enjoyed it. And it was in a very weird way. It was like preparing me for my next year, but also I already knew like what's the point of doing foundation if the decision was made for me, right? So it was a bit of a fine, I'll do it, but also like I know what I'm meant to do. And Mark, this is crazy. When I started my second year of university, I walk into the class, and interior architecture like is very technical, like it's AutoCAD drawings and like measurements, and I just got in there in the class and I was like, this is not for me. Like there was an alarm in my brain that's like blaring, get out. So I remember like leaving the first day of school and calling my parents pre-Skype, pre and like old school, like my dad would get a heart attack from like the phone bill and be like, Mom, I don't like this course. It's not for me. And she's like, well, if it's not for you, you can come back to Bahrain. And I said, okay, don't worry, I'll graduate. So I actually like didn't have an option. If I wanted to switch degrees, you can come back because we're not going to redo the first and second year. We've already paid for the fee. So that was like my first hard lesson in resilience. Like you have to be a
Very cool.
finisher. You're
Hmm.
happy, you're not happy, you're confused. You have two options. You complete your course or you come back. And obviously, in your early 20s, being in one of the most vibrant cities in the world, where the city in itself is like a museum and of
Exactly.
opportunity. Like, I'm not going to give up the theater and just street art and performances and music and the parks. Like, I'm not going to come back. So I powered through. I did my degree and in a subject that I did not like. And I knew that as soon as I was done, I could pursue what I wanted to do. But also being in London, I worked for 4 years. I never came back for the summer. I found jobs and I worked and I made money and I exposed myself to all the different parts of being abroad. So I think where I worked in fashion, I worked in with different designers, and then that opened doors into business later on when I started my own company.
So it's fascinating you say that because it does it is a journey as we always talk about, and it does teach resilience and does teach like the minute something goes wrong or you know it's not what you thought it was, oh screw it, I'm done basically. But then you started realizing all the stuff you would miss at the same time, and it kept you there, which I think is great. Can you? I mean, you all those early years, you were involved in design and media and storytelling and writing. A lot of things you said you really liked as a kid, um, and then you started evolving, as you said, into entrepreneurship and so on. Were there any specific experiences that really stand out for you? Like wow, they were like maybe even a little turning point.
Yeah, there was a couple. I think one was there was a competition that the university held for £1,000, which is quite a lot of money, I guess, as a student. And
Mm,
you had to come up with a concept for the series of universities because my college was a part of a series of other colleges. And I worked collaboratively with two designers, and we created a digital publication concept for the university where you could get all your news and you could find job opportunities. So it was like an online portal. And we won that prize. It was £1,000. And that was the first time I've won anything that I've come up with from my vision. Like I had an idea, I put it together, and again, Mark, I don't have at the time, I didn't have the communication tools to like use different
mm,
platforms to build really great presentations, but I was a great creative director. Like I could pull the right talent and I could come up with something really cool by working with people's strengths and just like working in a team. So we won that prize. And that was a game-changing moment because I was like, aha, I can come up with an idea and I could put it out in the world and it could actually it could be of value. So that was one aha moment. I think my other aha moment is I worked with an amazing designer called Liza Bruce. I was applying for jobs right, left, and center. And then randomly, I just had enough. And I picked up the first, I called the first number that was on my list. And I was like, I applied to this job like a week ago or a month ago or whatever. Like, can you like interview me? She's like, yeah, come today at 4 p.m. And I was like, very big moment for me in life as well, which is like pick up the phone, like just talk to people. And when I got to meet Alessandra, that was the manager at the time, she had like a stack of CDs. So she had printed out CDs, but she didn't have time to like go through them. So when I called her, she was like, just come to the store. So that was my first job that I got working in fashion. And I worked closely with the founders at the time, Liza Bruce and her husband Nikolai. He was an amazing interior designer. She was an amazing fashion designer. She came up with the lycra suit and the cat suit concept. And they had at the time stores in LA, New York, London, and a beautiful home in Marrakesh. And this was my first exposure into entrepreneurship. I've never worked with an entrepreneur. This is again pre-Instagram, pre-Facebook, pre anybody kind of showing the behind the scenes of how they build things. And Liza was an open door. And coming back to your question of what was the aha moment there, I remember telling Liza, don't worry, I'm not going to steal your ideas when I work for you. And then because for me, it was like I grew up in a culture where family businesses are very hush hush around their business activities. I didn't have that exposure. And she was like, listen, you're young. Give me everything you have in terms of energy, and I'll teach you everything I know. And my aha moment here was there is value to my energy as a young person. Again, in my culture, you're valued with more experience. You're not valued when you're in your early 20s or a student. Like, well, what would you know? But actually, you're super cool at that age and you know what's trendy and we need you. And she's like, I'll teach you everything I know. And she did. And obviously, that playbook stayed with me. And I kind of used that later on when I built my own series of, different companies later on. So Liza was my first exposure. And working with her, I cleaned the shop floor. I styled mannequins. I dealt with VIP clients. I would do errands. I would steam things. I would also get involved with design and fabrics and meet editors from Vogue and Elle and, close down the shop for just high net worth individuals who would come and buy their entire wardrobe for Saint Tropez. And that exposure was so amazing for me, just at the heart of Knightsbridge in London. So that was a big turning point for me as well.
No, it's fantastic, and that wise or that wisdom you just gave out was like pick up the phone and actually speak to somebody. A lot of times they don't have time. A lot of times, and in our business, with talking to executives and matching them with great companies or startups, um, they don't have time, and it's all about the relationship. It's all about the trust. It's all about when you told her that she just opened up and said we can do this together. And she wasn't worried about you taking anything and whatnot. She just and there's a difference between one thing I find right now, it's not about years of experience, but it's actually about actual experiences and the energy that you are bringing to the table to do that. That's what people want to have in people that they're bringing on, and that's what people want to go to, is they want to be able to bring their experiences to something and contribute them and learn more. It's not rocket science. And one of my favorite quotes is Maya Angelou, when she says, most people forget what you said, most people forget what you've done, but they'll always remember how you made them feel. And we're human. If you make someone feel like you can be trusted and you're going to bring it all, whether you're an athlete or an actor or a doctor or whatever it is, an employee, then people love that, and everybody performs way better. The move back to Bahrain, was that an inflection point, or was that in itself an inflection point, or did it become an inflection point? How did that come about?
Yeah, so after I worked with Liza, I worked with an incredible editor who was one of the editors of Vogue China. So that was an incredible opportunity for me as well. And then I entered the world of publishing, Mark. So I entered the world of publishing and content creation, but it was very traditional. And then I moved to a publishing house in the heart of London. And strangely enough, Mark, the projects that this publishing house handled were projects based in the Middle East. So I was recruited to work for this institution that was getting contracts from Qatar and Beirut and Lebanon and different parts of my region where we spoke Arabic. So I would fly out with this company from London and they'd be like, we weren't expecting a Bahraini girl to be here to work with us. And that was my first exposure in dealing with clients and projects and contracts and content creation and that mishmash or the worlds of creativity, but also meeting a commitment. That was my playbook. I really learned how to serve a client and to deliver on the project. Then I had an idea, which was at the time Twitter had just launched in 2010. And I was obsessed with blogging and social media. And I kept trying to get the publishing house to put some of the content we were creating online. And I was shot down by the editor. And she was like, this is not high fashion. This is just cheap, basically. It's not on brand. And I just felt this was the future. So I quit and I started my own publication out of my own apartment in London. And I basically started this Studio 54 vibe, but like very like, without the sexiness of the clubbing and the drinking, just very straight up a machine of content creators were coming over, working with me. I recruited over 50 interns, and we just started churning out content on social media, on blogs that are around the design industry. And then how did I end up back in Bahrain? I got a couple of projects from London. You know, Carnaby Street became my client, and they came to us like, we love what you're doing. Can you do it for us? So this was again a big aha moment for me. What I offered had value. That was my first big check as an individual, and I was able to pull again the creative people I was, that were working basically as interns into these paid projects. Now, what was interesting is women from the region, from Kuwait and from Qatar, would come to London and be like, we want to sit with Wafa because we want to build our own stuff, our own publications, our own websites, our own e-commerce
Love
stores.
it.
So I was like, great, I'll just do this as a side hustle till my magazine kicks off. But at the time, my magazine didn't really have a monetization strategy, and the world was being super disrupted by online and offline media, and there was no kind of ad revenue models. So I started I went straight into the agency life, and I started serving a client pool from the region out of London. And after being away for so many years, about 6, 7 years, I got really homesick. A lot of my colleagues had left. And I just, no matter how much money you made in London, Mark, it just went down, like it just disappeared because it's such an
Yeah.
expensive city. So I moved back home with nothing in my pocket, and I started building my corporate communication agency now, which is about 15 years old. And it was very tough in the beginning to do it, just because in London I could do everything from my flat, and here you have to get an office and you have to get registered. So you need the seed money to begin, and we didn't have a lot of the very awesome entrepreneurship laws that you have now. It was really tough to like get set up. So kicking and screaming and just blood, sweat, and tears, and almost wanted to quit every day. But like it was a very tough first few years until I started getting the agency rolling. And then that's how I ended up in back in the region serving an amazing clientele of the business. And I want to say one more thing, which is in London, no matter what I did, I was always a small fish in a big pond. But when I came back here, I quickly became, in my view, like a big fish in a small pond. And I think that was an exciting place to be in, where like I was from here, but I was very different, and I was able to attract a lot of coverage and press and come with a whole new way of doing business.
It's interesting what you said about when they said we didn't expect a woman to be coming or something like that when you went on that trip and everything. And I've had the good opportunity actually of connecting a lot of great women into positions that the clients would tell me they even were surprised I'm even presenting a woman for the position. Like in Latin America, I put 3 women into senior jobs out of Miami to do work in Latin America, and they would tell me they're not going to last in Latin America the way the men are there and whatnot, and they did fantastic. And I was just having fun actually, as a guy, putting women in positions that they said weren't going to be good. And so it sounds like it kind of, whether you knew it or not, made you want to do it even more because of the challenge that they didn't expect you to do that. And then especially you're going against tradition too about a woman, especially in very traditional places like Bahrain or the Middle East. You're going against tradition of what the woman does. In fact, you learn that from your mom to some degree too, about how to be that. And so I find it fascinating. I find it exciting in a way where people that take on challenges, bold challenges, and make things happen is what you've done. And it sounds like you can see the thread always. It sounds like you were developing, if you will, the playbook for how to make things happen. So can you talk a little bit about how also, things like Global Shapers and Entrepreneur Organization and all that, and even Barrel and Dunn and is it Obey and Hill? Those
Yes.
experiences obviously played a big part in the journey too, but how it evolved into now Playbook and share about what Playbook is all about.
So I think when I came to Bahrain and in the region, I mean, I'm a yes girl, Mark. Like if anyone calls me to ask me to speak, sometimes people don't get through their sentence. I'm like, I'll do it. They're like, you don't even know what this is. And I'm like, I'm in. And I am really open to opportunities. I haven't got like I haven't changed much since I started my company. And I think that kind of openness has allowed me to be a part of so many amazing organizations, whether it's the Chamber of Commerce, or entrepreneurs organization that was always a dream of mine to like join this millionaires club so that I can learn from other millionaires. That was a huge thing for me. And I think to join at the time, you had to be making $1 million in revenue. So for the longest time, that was my goal. I want to keep learning. I want to join this club and this network. To do that, I need to achieve this goal. And that pushed me to achieve the $1 million USD. And I was obsessed with just joining all these amazing groups. I'm now a YGL, which is an incredible deal because you get nominated by your government to join, and not many women are representing. The ratio for men to women isn't that equal when it comes to the World Economic Forum. So I've always been happy to join and be a part of society and community. And I think that also stems from my father. He's very big on just making sure that he's integrated in society. So I've seen him be a part of so many different groups, whether it's the Engineer Society or the Rotary Club, and my mother as well. So I think that's been like a given. This is what we do when we work. You kind of join a tribe and groups, and you contribute, and you volunteer and you support. So I think that's on the network side. And on the serial entrepreneurship side, I launched a few other businesses because Mark, my agency became an accelerator. I had a great team. We were a marketing machine. We still are. And then when you have the developers and the marketing team and the business development team and then a really good operational team, it's really easy to keep layering different products. So I was using my company as an accelerator to introduce new products. So Barrel and Drum was like, an eyewear brand, and we launched that, and we had great success just in distribution. We were in 50 different stores. We were contracting to different entities, and then I launched Sukkar, which was like this really kitsch, brand as well, that had all these like little Middle Eastern motifs and designs on backpacks and like laptop covers. So I was and I started a concept store. So I built a product fashion division in my company. And then I realized after doing that for a few years that like I wasn't as invested in it. In theory, it made sense in business, but then I really loved offering services. So then I kind of weaned off those projects, and I started Playbook right after COVID. I had just had my son, and I've done the PR thing and the communication thing for so long. And my colleagues were like, my friends would be like, "You're so good at it." And I'm like, "Yeah, but it doesn't bring me much joy right now." And
Hmm.
it just felt at some point like it was very generic, and I couldn't find the purpose in the work. Like, what difference does it make if I promoted this hotel or this restaurant or this airport? It's the same
Transaction.
strategy. I was always trying to sell something, and I just felt that I really care about impact. I really care about making a difference. And then my journey started with Playbook just through a lot of experimentation. I was exposed to the Global Gender Gap Report, which said that it's going to take over 300 years to close the economic gender gap. And that upset me. And I did some more research and discovered that women do really well in school. We actually get better grades, but when women pivot to start working, the numbers start to look really weird, with less than 10% making it to any leadership position. We make less money than men. And I just said, what happened? We do so well in academia. So Playbook started just as an offline experience. I used my other company to host a series of summits where we invited, at the time, like over a series of events, 6,000 women. We held 300 master classes and live sessions just around the topic of where did things go wrong, and what can we learn from other women what are the playbooks that should have been taught us in school and university. And then as an offline model, Mark, that did really well. We made 3 million USD just through ticketing and subscriptions.
Hmm.
And then I was like, I need to pull this out of the agency, and it needs to be a standalone space. So I was like, I'm not going to jump into this again. I'm way too old to just run, head first into a new company, because I know how much energy it takes and how heartbreaking it is as well to close something down.
Yeah.
And I started Playbook with just a pitch deck, and I just started talking to people because I was like, I'm not going to do this if it's not going to work and if there's no traction. And I went on a roadshow, aka I spoke to 3 people every day for 3 months just to get feedback. And every time I pitched Playbook to a woman, they would say things like, how can we help? How can we invest, and can we pay? So I was like, no, 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 I'm just asking for feedback. But by the third phone call, when I got offered money, I was like, why don't I start an early subscription list? And we made about 50,000 USD in a couple of weeks. And I knew I was onto something. So with the traction, with our track record, with the story, I packaged Playbook and went to venture capital, and we raised our first round in 2022 to start building Playbook. And what does Playbook look like now? It's part masterclass, part community, very similar to kind of LinkedIn Learning, but for women, where women connect, invest, and do business. And it's been a couple of years. We have 10,000 members. We're halfway through our seed round, and we have over 20,000 minutes of content and over 20 investment opportunities on the app. So that's really like compressed in a nutshell. And I have to also like mention my co-founders. I ran my agency as a solo founder, which is dreadful just because you're so alone. No one ever gets it. It's always you versus the team. No matter what you do, you're still the boss, right? So like,
Right.
no one sees you as their friend, and no one and even if they do, it's like the lines start to get blurry. So then when you want to be assertive, it's strange. So I think with Playbook, what's been really great is just having two co-founders, Shreyas Mahan, and some incredible A players like Nadia Darwish, who's our COO, and they're game changing just from a supportive perspective. It's like you have 4 or 5 incredible minds working with you on the same business, trying to hack different aspects of it. So I wouldn't be here without them. They all own equity and they're amazing. So that's also a part of the Playbook. It's
Well,
kind of
I think part of the playbook is teams win championships. Also, and that's what you're kind of talking about. And in fact, winning a championship with a team is even always, I've always heard this even from sports people. It's always more fun and more joyful when you win a championship as a team versus in a single thing. It's exciting if you win like a singles match in tennis, but it's a lot more exciting when you win as a team with other
yeah.
people. So I get what you're saying, and congrats and all that. And it's so easy to see the thread of the infamous journey that we always talk about that we're on that leads to a certain place. And you're always being influenced and you're always influencing others at the same time. And so I have one last question, only because one thing we say in LA is we got to leave them wanting more so we can do a sequel. That's what's important here in LA. But one last question. 2020 was the year that one of my clients called it the year that flew by slowly. And sometimes it feels like it was yesterday, and sometimes it feels like years ago, and it's already been 5. So we're in the last half of 2025 already, amazingly. What are you most grateful for, and what are you most hopeful for?
I'm mostly grateful for just the fundamentals. I think I've been exposed to a lot of content that's made me really reevaluate just how privileged I am. I'm grateful for like the fundamentals, water, shelter, safety, my kids having the luxury of going to school and being able to have a bed to sleep in. So like I'm just so grateful for life and being alive and having my parents close by and just dignity, like having
Mm.
just so much stuff that we take for granted. I feel like the last 2 years have been a great teaching lesson to be grateful. My kids mostly, I think if I'm stressed out, the minute I look at them, it's all like kind of fizzles away. And I'm so grateful to be their mother. And I think in terms of and obviously my team, like at Playbook, which we get to like have a good laugh and we get to work together. And I think they are really like they're my superheroes and my investors as well. So very grateful for the
Is
community at
that,
Playbook. I mean, you can see this kind of like, okay, Wafa,
it
but
sounds like
what
you're accepting, it sounds like you're accepting the Academy Award.
I'd like to thank my investors and wait, my mother and wait, my dad. Yes. And my better half. Um, I think that what I'm looking forward to in the second half of the year is just peace right now. Like I think we're living in volatile times and everybody's a little bit scared and even recently, and I hope I listen to this podcast years from now and have a good laugh about it. But like we have like drills and people are just uh, they're hopeful, but they're also preparing for the worst, and people are kind of reflecting on their summer holidays now and if they should travel. So I am most looking forward to like a very peaceful 6 months. Like I just hope that things kind of get regulated emotionally and get dialed down so that we can maintain our lives
Yeah.
and just have a good summer and have a good rest of the half of the year. So that's what's on my mind currently in terms of what I'm hoping for.
Yeah, I think you and a whole bunch of others and us are hoping the same. And well, I'm grateful to have a really good new friend. That's what I'm grateful for.
Same
And
here, Mark.
and I'm both grateful and hopeful because you are a leader who cares and doing great things. And it's kind of Wonder Woman a little bit type of thing when you got, businesses and spouses and partners and kids and life and whatnot. But I think you manage to take it on in such a good way that it doesn't overwhelm you, and when it does, you just look at your kids and it fizzles away, as you said. So I think that's great too. So thank you for all that. Thanks for being on the Leaders Who Care series, and we're looking for so much more in the future.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you for having me.